Welcome, David Levin here, Raising Your Game Today. This is Tuesday, so we're talking about the mental game of sports and competition. Fridays are for the rest of our lives. This week, I want to share a story from outside of sports, and I mean way outside. This is from the world of entertainment, specifically music, and more specifically, Celine Dion, the great Canadian singer, most famous for the theme from Titanic, My Heart Will Go On, one of the biggest hits and artists of all time. Shocking to realize that song was almost 30 years ago. That doesn't seem possible. Anyway, our lesson today comes from Celine Dion. So you might be wondering what Celine Dion, the waif of a diva, can teach us about the mental game and peak performance and sports. But actually, it's a lot. It's actually a masterclass that has to do with self-mastery and willpower. So I read a great story this week. It was a profile of the record producer, David Foster, one of the most successful producers of all time, 16 Grammys, just insane, his career. But he told a little story about Celine Dion that just knocked me out. So they were out to dinner. They were working on a record at the time, and she was scheduled to record vocals the next day. And she had a personal policy, no speaking for 24 hours before recording. To protect her voice and make sure it was strong when she needed it, she would literally not speak for any reason for 24 hours. If she needed to have a conversation, she would write down what she wanted to say. So that's impressive enough to be that committed to doing whatever it takes to be your best on game day. And singing in the studio for her is game day, big time. When you record a record, that's forever. You never get a chance to do that again. So getting the best possible performance on tape is everything for a singer. So they're out to dinner. Robert De Niro, one of the greatest actors of all time, right beyond huge, just an icon. I wouldn't normally think I needed to say that, but I was telling my 16-year-old daughter this story because she's a singer too, and she was like, I don't know who that is. Robert De Niro. Anyway, they're out to dinner. The great Robert De Niro comes over, wants to meet her. She still doesn't speak. Happy to meet him, but writes all her comments on a paper napkin. Afterward, David Foster said, come on, couldn't you make an exception for De Niro? And she said, no, if you walk on a broken leg once, you might as well walk on it all day. I'm not sure I totally see that analogy, but I'm blown away by her commitment. But it actually goes even beyond that. It's one thing to set yourself a bar that high. In our advanced mental game master training, we set some pretty high bars for your mental game on game day. Excuse me. One example, from an hour or so before the game, all the way through to the end, you literally don't allow yourself to have any conversations or even think any thoughts that aren't directly related to peak performance. And from after the game to the next morning, you don't allow yourself to think about anything that went wrong, only positive thoughts, till the next morning. That's our version of not speaking for 24 hours before recording. So it's one thing to accept that challenge, to believe it really matters, to take things to that level. But it's another thing altogether to have the willpower and self-mastery to actually do it. You're in the locker room. Robert De Niro comes in, wants to meet you and talk to you, or whoever the iconic actor would be for you. Do you have the conversation, or do you stick to your mental game plan? That space right there between what we know it takes to be our best and what we actually do is the most important factor in our performance. So the biggest lesson from Celine Dion is to do whatever it takes to develop that level of willpower. That's the real secret to a killer mental game. It's willpower. And the reason is that pretty much everything in our lives works against us doing what it takes to be truly excellent. The things we need to do are hard, physically and emotionally and socially. And the higher up we go, the harder they get. If we don't develop the willpower to push through, we simply will not get there. So how do you do that? How do you develop stronger willpower? A lot of people would probably say you can't. Deep down, that seems to be what most coaches, teachers and even parents believe. But I can tell you from firsthand experience with our students, it's not true. You absolutely can develop and strengthen your willpower. And the way to do it is really like with any other muscle. You learn the correct technique, you start with small weights, you do it over and over, and pretty quickly, you get stronger. The trick there is learning the technique. You have to learn how your mental game works and how to get control of it. And that's what our Raise Your Inner Game Sports Academy training teaches. That's why it's the foundation. Our advanced course comes after that, and you can learn about both of those at raiseyourinnergame.com. But once you have that core technique, it's just a matter of time and repetition. So those are the mental game lessons for athletes from Celine Dion. Number one, commit yourself to doing whatever it takes to be your best on game day, no matter how extreme or outrageous or uncomfortable it might seem. And number two, develop the willpower to follow through, stay focused, and do it. All right, I hope that was helpful. I know how powerful this is. Let me know if you have any questions. Otherwise, keep up the good work. I'll see you next time.